I was standing at the gate with a bag of fresh vegetables, smiling because I'd found Raj's favorite mangoes on sale. The door swung open, and before I could even greet them, Tara hurled a dripping garbage bag straight at me. It burst, rotten. Food, used tissues, and a broken egg ran down my sari. From behind her, my son didn't say a word. He just turned away. Tara laughed. "Next time, knock. This isn't your house anymore." I picked up the trash in silence, but something inside me shifted. Before we continue, I'd love to know, where are you watching from today? Comment below. I wasn't always this quiet. I wasn't always this still. There was a time my voice echoed through classrooms and prayer halls, calling out multiplication tables and morning hymns in equal measure. For 34 years, I was Mrs. Dutta, strict but fair, the teacher, with the sharp sari pleats and even sharper memory. My students feared disappointing me more than they feared failure. I taught generations how to read, calculate, think. And yet, my proudest achievement wasn't found in the school ledger. It was my son, Raj. When my husband Sudhir passed unexpectedly, just a day after Raj turned 11, I thought my spine would shatter from the weight of grief. But it didn't. It curved, yes, bent, reshaped itself around a new kind of strength. I returned to work 3 weeks later. People said I was brave. I wasn't. I was just a mother who knew that if she crumbled, her boy would never stand tall again. I stretched, every rupee, tutored in the evenings, cooked from scratch, sewed Raj's uniforms with trembling hands and blurry eyes. My in-laws offered to take him, but I refused. I would not be pitied, and my son would not be raised in a house without love. Raj grew up into a gentle boy, curious, respectful, slightly shy. He always waited for me at the school gate, his thumb hooked under his backpack strap, his eyes searching until he saw me. And when he got into college, I cried. Not because I was afraid, but because we had made it. Every bruise, every late-night walk home in the rain, every burnt finger from a borrowed iron, it had all been worth it. Even after he started working, he never forgot to bring me something home. Little things. A new tea strainer. A shawl. Once, a book of poems he thought I'd like. People used to whisper, "He's such a good boy." And I used to smile. Yes, I thought, because he saw how hard I loved him. When he met Tara, it was like a story unfolding too quickly. She was modern, fashionable, very fast. She called me Auntie in English, never Ma or Mummiji. Her nails were always painted, her heels too high for our muddy street, and her words always a little too polished to be warm. Still, I welcomed her with open arms. Bought her gold bangles, just like my mother-in-law had done for me. Made her favorite dishes. Once even YouTubed a fancy pasta recipe she liked. I thought, maybe this is how the world works now. Fast love, new ways. I had to keep up. They married within 6 months, and I gave them what I thought was the greatest gift of all. Space. I offered them the master bedroom, moved myself into the smaller back room, and told them they could treat the house like theirs. After all, what's the point of sacrifice if you can't pass comfort forward? But something in Tara's eyes flickered when I said that. Not gratitude. Something else. Possession. She started calling it our house within a week. Not yours, not ours, just mine and Raj's. She'd say it with an edge, like I was a guest overstaying my welcome. But I brushed it aside. I'd spent so many years surviving storms. I thought I could weather this one too. I told myself she just needed time. That she was young, nervous, adapting. When she moved a crystal Ganesh idol to a corner shelf and replaced it with a scented candle that smelled like coconuts and synthetic flowers, I didn't say a word. When she started ordering takeout instead of letting me cook, I offered to help clean instead. I tried to be small, gentle, invisible even, because I thought that's what good mothers-in-law do. but every inch I stepped back, she took a foot forward. Every time I tried to give her comfort, she took it as an invitation to erase me. And Raj? My Raj started looking at me differently, like I was a burden. A box he couldn't quite unpack in his shiny new married life. He stopped waiting at the gate. He stopped noticing when I didn't eat dinner. He stopped seeing me. I would sit in the back room, cross-legged on my thin mattress, hands in my lap, telling myself, it's just a phase. Things will settle. But deep down, something inside me was already beginning to unravel. The woman who taught generations to stand up tall was now curling herself smaller with each passing day. I gave them the largest room in the house, thinking love needed space. But I didn't know they would try to lock me out of my own home. The change didn't happen overnight. It crept in, like mold behind wallpaper. Quiet, slow, but poisonous all the same. It started with little things. Tara began correcting me. Not kindly, not in private. Ma, don't put turmeric in the dal like that. It's old-fashioned. Ma, please don't wear that faded sari when guests come. It makes the house feel depressing. Ma, why do you talk so slow? People can't keep up. At first I laughed it off, tried to play along. I didn't want her to feel criticized. After all, I knew what it felt like to be the new woman. In someone else's home. I'd once spent a year learning how my mother-in-law liked her rotis stacked and how her tea had to be boiled 3 times. But there was respect in that house. Even in disagreement, there was dignity. Here, there was none. I remember the day Tara hosted a brunch for her office friends. She cooked everything herself, which I applauded. But she made it very clear I wasn't to help or be seen. Ma, just relax in your room, okay? They're not really the traditional type. I stayed in my back room with the fan clicking overhead, listening to laughter and clinking glasses. At one point, I stepped out to use the bathroom and overheard one of her friends whisper, "Oh, she lives with his mother?" "That's so regressive." Tara didn't correct her. She laughed, loudly. That night I found my stainless steel spice box, my masala daba, in the garbage. She had replaced it with tiny glass jars from some foreign brand. I stood over the bin, staring at the remnants of a kitchen that had once been my kingdom. Still, I said nothing. Then came the redecoration. The maroon curtains Sudhir and I had bought during our first Diwali in this home. Gone. Our wall clock, the one with the chipped frame but perfect time, replaced with a gold-rimmed digital thing that blinked in blue. Even the oil lamp shelf by the altar was moved to make room for more aesthetic lighting. I didn't recognize the house anymore. It was still mine, legally, emotionally, but it looked like a hotel, cold, soulless. And yet I tried to understand. Maybe she was making a home in her own way. Maybe I needed to step back further, but there's a difference between stepping back and being pushed out. One morning, I walked into the kitchen to prepare my tea, my usual ritual, and found my teacup missing. A simple thing. Cream-colored. Ceramic with a tiny chip in the handle. I had used it every day for almost a decade. When I asked Tara, she didn't even look up from her phone. "Oh, that old cup? I thought it was cracked. I tossed it. No apology, no hesitation, just gone. I found it later in the outside trash, broken in half. Like me." The final blow came one Sunday evening. A slow, cloudy day. I was dusting the shelf in the hallway when I noticed something off. My wedding photo, Sudhir in his cream-colored sherwani, me barely 18 in bright red silk, was missing. Asked Raj about it. He rubbed his forehead and muttered, "Tara thought it clashed with the new decor. She wanted a more neutral look." I searched the house that night, finally found the frame in the bottom drawer of a bathroom cabinet next to half-used shampoo bottles and a spare toilet roll. I sat on the floor for a long time, holding that photo in my lap, like it was a baby I couldn't protect. It wasn't about the photograph. It was about what she was doing, slowly, deliberately, erasing my life from the walls, the shelves, the air, and my son, My boy, who once cried because I missed a parent-teacher meeting, he let her do it. He was either too blind or too weak to stop it. I began to notice how careful he was around her, how he'd glance at her before answering me, how he avoided being alone with me, as though even my presence was an act of betrayal. I had not only lost space in my own house, I had lost my only companion. My neighbors began to notice. One auntie quietly asked me why I never came out for our evening walks anymore. Another hinted that Tara was saying unkind things about me to the society ladies, that I was moody, controlling, even unwell. I felt my breath shorten. My hands started shaking more often when I washed the dishes. Sometimes I'd hear them whispering in the other room, laughing softly, and I'd think, are they talking about me? Paranoia is a cruel thing. It eats your silence and spits out shame. I started questioning myself. Maybe I was overstepping. Maybe Tara did need more freedom. Maybe I had become the problem. But deep inside, beneath the layers of guilt, age, and resignation, I knew the truth. This wasn't about space. It wasn't even about modernity. It was about erasure. And I had been helping them do it by staying silent. I let them rearrange my home, thinking it was just furniture. But the real thing they were trying to move was me. Things didn't just get worse. They got sharper, colder, more calculated. It was no longer just about redecorating or replacing heirlooms. It was about control. Subtle at first, like Tara switching the Wi-Fi password and forgetting to tell me. Or moving the remote so I'd have to ask her every time I wanted to watch my evening news. She stopped hiding it. "Ma, maybe the news is too much for you," she said one day, while sliding the remote behind her back. "You should rest more. You know, at your age." She was barely 30, but she looked at me the way some people look at cracked porcelain, half pity, half disgust. I began to feel like a tenant. No, worse, a squatter in my own home. There were days I would wake up early just so I could drink tea in the living room before they emerged. The moment Tara walked in, the air changed. She'd sigh loudly, open windows I'd just closed, re-wipe clean surfaces, say things like, "Oh, you used that cloth again? No wonder the mirror's streaked." My presence became an offense. I tried to make myself even smaller, kept to my room, started ironing my saris at night so the hallway plug point wouldn't bother her visual flow. I even stopped keeping my toothbrush in the common bathroom because she once said it ruined the aesthetic. But humiliation isn't always loud. Sometimes it trickles in slowly, stealing little pieces of you with every passing day. One day, I found my arthritis medication missing. I searched every drawer, every corner. Finally asked Tara if she'd seen it. She shrugged. "You're always misplacing things, Ma. Are you sure you're not, forgetting more these days?" The way she said forgetting made something in my spine go cold. That night, I cried quietly into my pillow. Because I was forgetting things. Or maybe I was starting to believe her when she said I was. Gaslighting, they call it now. Back then, I just called it confusion. Raj was no help. He was working longer hours, or at least that's what he said. I never really knew anymore. When he came home, he barely spoke. He looked drained, faded, like someone trying to live, with one foot in two worlds. I once told him, softly, that Tara was making it hard for me to breathe in the house. He rubbed his temples, not even looking at me. "Ma, please don't start. She's trying. Don't make things harder." Harder? I had given up the master bedroom, stopped using the kitchen, walked on eggshells in my own house, and he thought I was the one making things harder? That night, Tara had friends over. I wasn't told. I heard them laughing in the living room while I sat on the floor of my tiny back room, eating cold rice with pickle. My back hurt. My hands trembled from the lack of my medicine. And then, just before midnight, I heard my name. "She still lives here," a guest whispered. Tara's voice, smug and low. Only because Raj is too soft. She's basically like the maid now, just takes up space. The words hit harder than a slap. The next morning I tried to speak to Raj. I made tea, sat with him, on the edge of the sofa like old times. He didn't even take a sip. "Ma," he said with tired eyes, "why do you keep trying to cause problems? Just let us live in peace." That was the moment something in me cracked, not like glass, but like dry earth under too much heat, a deep fracture that had been forming for months. I said nothing, just nodded, took the full cup of untouched tea back to my room, and poured it down the sink. But even that wasn't the worst moment. That came later, when I found my late husband's ashes moved from the top of the prayer shelf to a dusty storage box under the stairs. "Too much clutter," Tara had said, "and frankly, it's just creepy." Creepy, the urn that held the man I had loved, suffered with, built this house with, reduced to clutter. I didn't scream. I didn't cry in front of them. But I opened the storage box, took the urn in my hands, and whispered, "I'm sorry. I let them treat you like dust." It was the only time I felt like I had failed him. By then, even the neighbors had stopped saying hello. Maybe they didn't know what to say. Maybe they believed the rumors Tara was spreading, that I was mentally unstable, bitter, refusing to adapt. The isolation became a second skin. My world shrank to the size of that little back room. I had raised a boy who used to hold my hand to cross the street. Now he wouldn't even look me in the eye when I passed him in the hallway. And then came the moment I'll never forget. I stepped into the hallway barefoot, holding a pile of laundry. Tara brushed past me and said under her breath, "You're not even house help. At least they get paid." She didn't say it loud, but she said it clearly. I dropped the laundry. Not from shock, but because my hands stopped working, and yet I said nothing, because I knew I wouldn't be saying nothing for much longer. They thought they were breaking me. But what they didn't see, what they never saw, was that I had already started gathering the pieces. Not to shatter, but to rebuild. The human heart doesn't snap like a twig. It creaks first, under pressure, under silence, until one day it folds in on itself. That's how it happened to me. After Tara's "at least they get paid" comment, I walked straight to my room, shut the door, sat on the edge of my thin mattress and stared at my hands. They were trembling, yes, but not from weakness. It was a tremble of rage. Rage that had nowhere to go. Rage that had lived too long in quiet places. And then, without even meaning to, I reached under the bed and pulled out the old teakwood box I hadn't opened in years. Inside was a faded red sari with golden border, my wedding sari. I lifted it gently, the smell of mothballs and jasmine still clinging to the threads. It was the last thing Sudhir ever touched before the hospital took him away. The weight of memory pressed against my chest, and I found myself falling backward, the fabric over my face like a veil of the past. I closed my eyes, and the flashbacks came. I'm 19, crouching by a kerosene stove in our first kitchen. Sudhir walks in, covered in sawdust, grinning. "Don't burn the rice again," he teases. I toss a spoon at him. "Then don't come home late." We laugh. We always laughed, even when there was no money, no fridge, no proper furniture. Love made those walls warm. Another flash. I'm 28, sitting on the floor of a government hospital, holding my newborn's hand. Raj had gotten pneumonia. Sudhir paced outside, begging God to take him instead. We didn't eat for 2 days, but when Raj recovered, Sudhir hugged me so tight I thought I'd burst. "I don't need anything else," he whispered. "We have him. We have everything." And we did. For a while. Then Sudhir died. The aneurysm struck at work. The doctor said it was sudden, instant, like lightning through the brain. He didn't feel a thing, but I did. I felt everything. The ground disappeared. The sky dimmed. Yet I stayed standing, for Raj, I worked double shifts, cut my own medicines so I could buy him a pair of shoes that didn't leak in the monsoon. Once, I fainted from hunger while tutoring, and the parents scolded me for being unprofessional. I still apologized. Every scar I carry is a love letter to my son, and now he couldn't even look me in the eye. Back in the present, I opened the cupboard, pulled out an old tin where I kept important documents. Inside it, wrapped in a brown envelope, was the deed to the house. My name. Only my name. I had paid every EMI with a broken back and blistered hands. It wasn't just property, it was proof that I had made something out of nothing. A monument to years of swallowing pain and still waking up at dawn to pack lunchboxes. I traced my finger over my name, Anamika Dutta. And for the first time in years, I said it aloud. I'm still here. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay, awake, replaying Tara's voice in my head like a broken record on repeat. You're not even house help. You ruin the aesthetic. You're too old. This isn't your house. She thought she had won. But what she didn't understand was that women like me don't break the way others do. We bend. We yield. We stay silent for the sake of peace. But once we decide to stand, really stand, we don't back down again. Next morning, I tied my hair back, put on a fresh cotton sari, and left the house at sunrise. Walked to the local temple, not to pray, but to breathe. And after that, I went to visit an old friend. Bhaskar, a retired lawyer whose wife and I used to do charity work with. He hadn't seen me in years. Anamika, he said gently, you look tired. I am, I replied, but I'm also done being invisible. We talked for hours. I showed him the deed, told him everything, not with anger, but with clarity. He listened, took notes. You don't need anyone's permission, he said. The law is on your side. Still, I hesitated. My son lived in that house. My blood, my boy. Would you be doing him a disservice? Bhaskar asked. By letting him believe this is how women should be treated? That question sat with me all evening. That night, as I sat at the dining table sipping tea, Tara walked in and paused. You're using the good cups now? She smirked. Yes, I said, calm, direct. I am. She rolled her eyes. Raj won't like that. Back in the present, I opened the cupboard, pulled out an old tin where I kept important documents. Inside it, wrapped in a brown envelope, was the deed to the house. My name. Only my name. I had paid every EMI with a broken back and blistered hands. It wasn't just property, it was proof that I had made something out of nothing. A monument to years of swallowing pain and still waking up at dawn to pack lunch boxes. Traced my finger over my name, Anamika Dutta, and for the first time in years, I said it aloud. I'm still here. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake, replaying Tara's voice in my head, like a broken record on repeat. You're not even house help. You ruin the aesthetic. You're too old. This isn't your house, she thought. She had won. But what she didn't understand was that women like me don't break the way others do. We bend, we yield. We stay silent for the sake of peace. But once we decide to stand, really stand, we don't back down again. The next morning, I tied my hair back, put on a fresh cotton sari, and left the house at sunrise. Walked to the local temple, not to pray, but to breathe. And after that, I went to visit an old friend. Bhaskar, a retired lawyer whose wife and I used to do charity work with. He hadn't seen me in years. Anamika, he said gently. You look tired. I am, I replied, but I'm also done being invisible. We talked for hours. I showed him the deed, told him everything, not with anger, but with clarity. He listened, took notes. You don't need anyone's permission, he said. The law is on your side. Still, I hesitated. My son lived in that house. My blood, my boy. Would you be doing him a disservice? Bhaskar asked, by letting him believe this is how women should be treated? That question sat with me all evening. That night, as I sat at the dining table sipping tea, Tara walked in and paused. You're using the good cups now? She smirked. Yes, I said, calm, direct. I am. She rolled her eyes. Raj won't like that. I met her gaze without blinking. Then he's free to buy new ones in his next house. She stared at me, really stared, for the first time. I saw a flicker of something in her face, not amusement, not contempt, uncertainty. She wasn't used to this version of me. She was used to shadows, not fire. Have you ever tolerated disrespect for the sake of family? Tell me in the comments. Your story might help someone else. That night I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I simply opened my safe, placed the house deed on the table, and began writing the notice that would change everything. There's a strange calm that comes after your heart breaks the final time. Not sadness, not anger. Just stillness, like the moment just before rain touches the earth, when everything holds its breath. That's how I felt the morning after I placed the house deed on my table. I didn't rush, I didn't raise my voice. I moved with quiet precision. Years of teaching had trained me well. Discipline, structure, grace. I sat at my desk, pulled out a clean notepad, and wrote a simple notice. Effective 30 days from today, Rajiv Dutta and Tara Dutta are to vacate the premises at address. This property is legally owned by Anamika Dutta and will no longer be shared by said parties. No further discussion. I made 2 copies, slipped one into an envelope, kept the other in my prayer book. Then I did something I hadn't done in months. Made a full breakfast. For myself. Poha with extra peanuts. Ginger tea in my best china cup. I ate it in the sunlit part of the living room, while classical music played softly from the old radio. I didn't care that Tara might wake up and scoff. That Raj might walk by in silence. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was occupying my home again, not tiptoeing through it like a tolerated ghost. Later that day, I visited the notary's office, handed over the envelope, registered the notice legally, then went to the temple and tied a thread to the banyan tree, not for a wish, but for closure. When I returned, Tara was in the kitchen, tossing salad in a glass bowl like she was performing for a cooking show. She looked me up and down. Out gallivanting again? I smiled. Just reclaiming what's mine. She blinked, laughed once. Good luck with that. I didn't respond. I simply walked past her, the smell of mustard oil and incense still on my hands. That evening, I set the envelope on the dining table just before dinner, waited until Raj was seated. He glanced at it, confused. What's this? Tara picked it up, flipped it open, and froze. Her face paled, then flushed, then hardened. You've got to be kidding me. Raj read it next. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. Finally, he looked up. Ma, what is this? I spoke evenly. It's a legal notice. You both have 30 days to vacate the house. I met her gaze without blinking. Then he's free to buy new ones in his next house. She stared at me, really stared. For the first time, I saw a flicker of something in her face. Not amusement, not contempt, uncertainty. She wasn't used to this version of me. She was used to shadows, not fire. Have you ever tolerated disrespect for the sake of family? Tell me in the comments. Your story might help someone else. That night I didn't cry, I didn't shout. I simply opened my safe, placed the house deed on the table, and began writing the notice that would change everything. There's a strange calm that comes after your heart breaks the final time. Not sadness, not anger. Just stillness, like the moment just before rain touches the earth, when everything holds its breath. That's how I felt the morning after I placed the house deed on my table. I didn't rush, I didn't raise my voice. I moved with quiet precision. Years of teaching had trained me well. Discipline, structure, grace. I sat at my desk, pulled out a clean notepad, and wrote a simple notice. Effective 30 days from today, Rajiv Dutta and Tara Dutta are to vacate the premises at address. This property is legally owned by Anamika Dutta and will no longer be shared by said parties. No further discussion. I made 2 copies, slipped one into an envelope, kept the other in my prayer book. Then I did something I hadn't done in months. Made a full breakfast. For myself, poha with extra peanuts, ginger tea in my best china cup. I ate it in the sunlit part of the living room while classical music played softly from the old radio. I didn't care that Tara might wake up and scoff, that Raj might walk by in silence. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was occupying my home again, not tiptoeing through it like a tolerated ghost. Later that day, I visited the notary's office, handed over the envelope, registered the notice legally, then went to the temple and tied a thread to the banyan tree, not for a wish, but for closure. When I returned, Tara was in the kitchen, tossing salad in a glass bowl like she was performing for a cooking show. She looked me up and down. Out gallivanting again? I smiled. Just reclaiming what's mine. She blinked, laughed once. Good luck with that. I didn't respond. I simply walked past her, the smell of mustard oil and incense still on my hands. That evening, I set the envelope on the dining table just before dinner, waited until Raj was seated. He glanced at it, confused. What's this? Tara picked it up, flipped it open, and froze. Her face paled, then flushed, then hardened. You've got to be kidding me. Raj read it next. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. Finally, he looked up. Ma, what is this? I spoke evenly. It's a legal notice. You both have 30 days to vacate. The house, Tara scoffed. You can't just throw us out? I can, I said, and I am. She turned to Raj. Are you seriously going to let her do this? He didn't speak, just stared at the paper like it had rewritten the laws of gravity. Tara stood up, her chair scraping loudly. Fine. You want a war, old lady? You'll get one. I didn't flinch. I've already fought my war, Tara. This is just the cleanup. She stormed out. Raj remained seated, silent, small. I didn't need an apology. I didn't want one. All I wanted was room to breathe. The days that followed were tense, but something had shifted. Tara tried everything, guilt, charm, even a few poorly veiled threats. I remained calm. When she screamed about the notice, I read a book. When she slammed cabinets, I played music louder. When she insulted me again, I smiled and watered the tulsi plant. She couldn't find a way in anymore. The walls she had once broken down with ease were now reinforced with steel and silence. Raj. He avoided me. But I saw the way he looked around the house now, like he was finally noticing what had been lost. The missing photos, the empty warmth, the hollowed-out space where laughter once lived. One night, I walked past their room and heard Tara hissing, "You need to fix this." Raj whispered back, "She's not backing down this time." No, I wasn't. And it was liberating. I started doing the things I'd stopped, praying aloud, watching old Hindi movies in the living room, even inviting my friend Nandita for chai one afternoon. "Oh, thank God," she said. "I missed you, not this new version of your house." We laughed, a full-bodied, from-the-stomach kind of laugh, the kind I thought I'd forgotten. The small things returned first: laughter, appetite, dignity. Then the bigger ones: purpose, joy, Control. For a few days, the house almost felt like mine again. But I knew it wasn't over. This was only the eye of the storm. Still, I cherished every peaceful moment, every reclaimed breath, because they reminded me that freedom isn't always loud. It often arrives gently, through small, defiant acts of self-respect. When Tara yelled, "You're nothing without us," I smiled and sipped my tea, because by then I knew she had it exactly backward. They say people show their true face when they're losing control. Tara didn't unravel like silk. She tore like cheap plastic under pressure, sharp-edged and loud. After the notice, her strategy shifted from mockery to manipulation, then quickly to aggression. I could almost map her unraveling like phases of the moon, predictable, cyclical, and full of shadows. First, she tried to charm. One morning, she knocked on my door with a tray of toast and juice. "Thought you might like breakfast in bed?" she said sweetly. I looked at the tray. No ginger tea, no upma, just dry toast and watery juice. She didn't know me at all. Still, I nodded. "Thank you," I said, taking the tray and placing it gently on the dresser. I didn't touch it. That afternoon I found the tray untouched in my room. She walked in, smirked, and said, "Wasteful, Ma. That's not very sustainable." The next day she tried tears. "I'm just trying to be a good daughter-in-law," she sobbed to Raj, loud enough for me to hear through the walls. "She hates me. She wants me gone because I'm not traditional enough." Raj didn't argue. He just sat there, rubbing his temples. By then, even he had started to fade under the weight of the truth. The charm failed. The tears dried up, so she moved to phase 3, intimidation. She started locking the kitchen cabinets at night, said it was to prevent ants, though I knew better. She began loudly telling phone callers about how some elders can be vindictive when they don't get attention. She even made veiled threats, like joking about how funny it'd be if someone slipped on spilled oil, or how unstable some people can be when left alone too long. It would have been laughable if it weren't so calculated. But I didn't waver. Each time she escalated, I de-escalated, like water slipping through a clenched fist. No matter how hard she tried to grip control, I wouldn't give her anything to hold on to. Then came the neighbors. She began spreading her version of the story, how I was senile, bitter, throwing them out for no reason. A few believed her. Most didn't. People had eyes. They'd seen the way I carried myself all these years. Still, I noticed whispers when I went to buy vegetables. A friend gently asked, "Why not just let them stay? They're your children." I smiled. I raised a son, not a tyrant, and I never raised her. But it hurt. Not because they questioned me, but because I had once done the same to other women. I had once said, "She's the mother-in-law. Maybe she's the one creating drama." Now I knew better. On the 17th day after serving the notice, things reached a fever pitch. I returned from the temple to find police officers at my door. Tara stood behind them, arms crossed. "She's emotionally abusive," she declared. "She's been threatening me. I fear for my safety." For a moment, the world spun. Not because I was afraid, but because the audacity of the lie nearly knocked the breath from my lungs. But fate has a sense of humor. One of the officers looked at me and smiled. "Mrs. Dutta?" I nodded. "I was in your math class, madam. 7th Standard, 1998. You once stayed after school to help me learn fractions when I was failing." I remembered. Him, Kunal Sharma. His handwriting was awful, but he always asked questions. He turned to Tara. "This woman raised half the neighborhood's children. I don't think she's threatening anyone." Tara's mouth fell open. Raj said nothing. The officers left with quiet apologies. Tara screamed that night, threw a plate, called me names I won't repeat, said I had poisoned her life. I sat calmly on the veranda, sipping my tea. Raj came out much later, his eyes heavy. She's not herself, he mumbled. Marriage is hard, Ma. I didn't respond, because I realized in that moment he was himself. This was who he had become, a man who let his wife abuse his mother and called it a rough patch. He walked back inside without waiting for a reply. That night, I packed his childhood trophies into a box, the ones I had dusted every Sunday, the ones he used to beam at after every school event. I didn't do it to be cruel. I did it because it was time to stop holding on to the version of him that only existed in my memory. 2 days later, I scheduled the movers. I gave them an exact inventory of what belonged to Raj and Tara. I knew. I remembered I had bought most of it myself. They arrived on a Saturday morning, Tara yelled. Raj looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him. Ma, please, he said once. This is too much. I met his eyes. No, Raj, this is just enough. The movers finished in 4 hours. I handed Tara a sealed envelope as they walked out. Inside was a check, not large, but fair. I don't owe you this, I said, but I owe myself the peace of knowing I never sank to your level. She didn't. Say thank you. She didn't even say goodbye. But as they stepped out, I closed the door behind them and locked it. The sound echoed through the hallway like thunder. Not angry thunder, but cleansing. For the first time in years, the silence in my home didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace. They left with shouting, but the quiet that followed was louder than any apology they never gave. The house was quiet now, not the strained, tense silence of fear, but the kind that follows after a long storm, the kind that lets you finally hear your own breath again. For the first time in years, I heard the tick of the old wall clock, the rustle of the mango tree outside, the soft creak of the floorboards when I walked barefoot. I moved through the rooms like someone visiting a sacred space, because that's what this house had always been, a temple built not of bricks, but of sacrifice, and now I had it back. I didn't rush to fill the emptiness. I let it sit. I let it settle. That first night alone, I made a simple dinner, khichdi with a dollop of ghee and fried papad. I ate at the dining table. Every light was on. I played Lata Mangeshkar softly in the background and lit 2 incense sticks, one for Sudhir, one for myself. Afterward, I stood in front of the mirror and looked at my reflection for a long time. I saw my age, yes, the silver in my hair, the lines etched around my mouth like tiny rivers of time. But I also saw something I hadn't seen in years. Myself, not Raj's mother, not Tara's victim, not the woman hiding in the back room, just Anamika Dutta. The next morning, I opened every window, dusted every shelf, even pulled out the good cushion covers and aired out the linens. I scrubbed the kitchen until it gleamed. As I folded towels in the laundry room, I found Tara's designer apron still hanging on a hook. I paused, then calmly folded it, placed it in a paper bag, and left it outside the front door with a note. Forgotten items. Closure doesn't always come with fanfare. Sometimes it's just a paper bag on the porch and the dignity of not needing to say more. The neighbors began noticing. One by one, they stopped me on my morning walks. Did they finally move? Are you okay? You look lighter. I smiled each time. Yes, I am. A week later, I started rearranging the house. Not to erase the past, but to restore it. I brought my wedding photo back to the living room, placed Sudhir's urn on a new altar shelf I'd built myself. I even reopened the storage trunk that held all the greeting cards Raj had drawn for me as a boy. One had a crayon heart and the words, "I'll always take care of you, Ma, always." I traced the letters with my fingertip. A part of me wanted to cry, but another part, stronger now, simply folded it, pressed it back into the box, and whispered, "Thank you for meaning it once. That's enough." And then, One afternoon, the bell rang. I opened the door to find a courier holding a cream-colored envelope. It was from Raj. Inside was a letter. Just one page. Ma, I know I failed you. I stood by and watched things happen that I should have stopped. I kept thinking it would get better, that time would fix it. But I was wrong. I let Tara speak for both of us when I should have defended you. I thought staying quiet was keeping the peace. But now I see, it was just cowardice. I don't know if I deserve forgiveness, but I wanted you to have this letter. I still love you. I always will, even if I couldn't show it the right way. Raj, I read it twice, then folded it slowly and placed it next to the deed in the safe. I didn't cry, because I knew now love is not about clinging. It's about honoring what was and letting go of what no longer serves you. I didn't call him. I didn't reply. Some things are better left in silence, so the lesson can echo louder. In the days that followed, I rediscovered forgotten pieces of myself. I joined the community library as a volunteer, started teaching math to underprivileged children again, just once a week, but it filled me with something I hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Nandita and I started hosting Sunday chai circles for the other widows in the neighborhood. We laughed, shared recipes. One of them even asked me to teach her how to email her granddaughter. I feel young again, she giggled. Like a college girl. So did I. Not because time had turned back, but because I had finally stepped into the life I had postponed for everyone else. And one morning, as I watered the tulsi plant, a small thought bloomed in my mind. Maybe this house was never meant to be a gift for Raj. Maybe it was meant to be my sanctuary, my reward. We spend our whole lives giving, assuming the final chapter is about being surrounded by family. But sometimes, the final chapter is about choosing yourself. As I watched the sunlight pour across the empty hallway, I realized I hadn't lost a family. I had gained my freedom. The thing no one tells you about peace is how loud it is at first. The absence of footsteps outside your door, the silence after dinner, the echo of your own voice when you speak, a thought out loud and realize no one's there to argue. At first, I mistook it for loneliness. But over time, I realized it wasn't absence. It was space, room to breathe, room to be. And in that space, I found joy again. I began tending the garden Sudhir once dreamed of. The patch by the back wall had been neglected for years, overrun by weeds and shadows. But I cleared it slowly, one stubborn root at a time. I planted jasmine, hibiscus, and a row of marigolds. And when the first bud bloomed, I touched it like it was gold. That little flower became my quiet monument, not to Tara or Raj or pain, but to resilience. Inside the house, I made changes too. The back room I'd been exiled to, I turned it into a reading nook with soft lamps and shelves of books. I painted the walls a gentle cream and hung wind chimes by the window. I moved back into the master bedroom, my bedroom. I didn't ask permission. One afternoon, while dusting the top shelf of the wardrobe, I found a yellowing envelope I hadn't touched in years. Inside were 2 old bus tickets, a scribbled note from Sudhir, and a photo of us laughing on a beach, trip Raj had never even heard about. I sat on the edge of the bed and smiled, not the tight-lipped smile I'd learned to wear around Tara, a real one, soft and full. Later that week, I hosted my first women's gathering, not a party. Just chai, sweets, and open hearts. We were 6 in total, retired teachers, widows, one divorcee. We talked about movies, politics, rising vegetable prices, and which of us was secretly watching Turkish dramas at night. The house was filled with laughter and clinking cups. That evening, as I cleaned up, I paused in the doorway of the living room and looked around. The cushions were slightly out of place. A spoon had fallen under the table. The curtains swayed gently in the breeze. It was imperfect, and utterly mine. A few weeks later, I received a text from Raj. Just one line. "Ma, can I visit you alone? Just for tea." I stared at it for a long time. My heart ached, but not in the way it used to. This ache wasn't about needing him. It was about what used to be. I didn't reply right away. I let the message sit. The next morning I woke early, lit incense, prepared ginger tea for one, sat at the table and waited, not for him, but for myself, to decide. I didn't text him back, not out of anger, but because healing doesn't always include reconciliation. Sometimes it means drawing a line where love no longer feels like safety. Instead, I pulled out the letter he'd sent weeks ago, read it again, and then I did something unexpected. I smiled, because I finally believed it. He did love me. He just wasn't brave enough to protect me. And that is not the kind of love I want in my home anymore. That evening, I met a young woman at the library who reminded me of myself years ago. A single mother, tired, thin, apologetic. We talked. I showed her some budget grocery tricks, gave her my extra pressure cooker, she cried. And as I held her, I realized something profound. All the love I poured into people who didn't value it could now be rerouted, redirected, given to those who would hold it gently. My house, once filled with judgment and noise, had become a space for healing, not just for me, but for others like me. Women who had been told to lower their voice, shrink their presence, survive in silence. Now, we were learning to live aloud. I even began writing small articles for a local women's magazine, essays on reclaiming space, aging with dignity, and why Ma is a title that should never be used to manipulate or erase a woman's identity. One piece got published. The editor called me a voice of quiet revolution. I liked that. Quiet revolution. It felt true. Then, one morning, while sweeping the porch, I noticed a familiar shape at the gate. Tara, alone, dressed plainly. No makeup, no designer bag. Just her. Our eyes met. She didn't speak. Neither did I. She placed a small bag by the gate. Inside it, I later discovered, was the broken photo frame of Sudhir and me. Cleaned, repaired, the glass replaced. There was no note, just that gesture. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a crack in the armor. A small human moment in the ruins of everything we'd destroyed. I didn't call out to her. I didn't invite her in, but I didn't slam the door either. I simply brought the photo inside, placed it on the mantel, and whispered, "We're home now." Have you ever had to choose peace over family? Or walked away from someone you once loved to protect yourself? Share your story below. Your strength might help someone else find theirs. I didn't rebuild my life with noise or revenge. I rebuilt it with silence, softness, and one firm decision. Never again will I shrink in the house I built with my own hands. When I look back now, it's not the shouting I remember. Not Tara's insults. Not Raj's silence. Not even the night. They walked out of my house for the last time. What I remember most is the sound of the lock clicking behind them. That tiny final sound that said, "You're safe now." For most of my life, I believed being a good woman meant being small, staying silent, giving until it hurt, then giving more. I was taught that endurance was virtue, that sacrifice was love. That dignity meant swallowing pride until it turned bitter in your throat. But now, at 64, I know better. Dignity is not silence. Love is not servitude. And family, real family, does not ask you to disappear. I think of the thousands of women like me. Women who cooked meals no one thanked them for, who cleaned messes they didn't make, who were told, "This isn't your house anymore," even after paying for every tile, every nail, every broken dream that built it. And I want to say this to you. Yes, you watching from your phone or your tablet or your television, you are not difficult. You are not too old. You are not in the way. You are a whole person, with stories, with scars, with a right to peace that doesn't need to be earned. I didn't become strong because I fought. I became strong because I stopped apologizing for existing. There are still days when I miss Raj. Not the man he is now, but the little boy who used to bring me water in his cupped hands when I had headaches. The boy who once said, "Ma, when I grow up, I'll build you a palace." He didn't build me a palace, but he taught me something far more valuable. That sometimes the people we raise must be released. That sometimes the home we think we're building for our children is really the one we need for ourselves. And as for Tara, I don't hate her. I pity her, because she believed power came from dominance, not respect, from volume, not value. And in doing so, she lost a woman who could have been her fiercest ally. All she had to do was show kindness. All she had to do was stay human. Now I no longer pray for things to return to the way they were. I don't want that. I pray for strength, yes, but also softness, for discernment, for peace that doesn't come at the cost of my own soul. Start my days with incense and silence. I end them with stories and books. I have found friendships rooted in truth, not obligation. And my home, this simple, old house, is filled with new sounds again. The laughter of children I tutor, the chatter of women who refuse to disappear quietly, the bubbling of tea, the scent of cardamom, the low hum of healing. This home doesn't belong to Tara. It never belonged to Raj. It doesn't even belong to the past. It belongs to me, to the woman who spent decades surviving, who finally chose to live. So if you're watching this and wondering, is it too late for me? Let me answer you with everything I have. No, it is not too late. Not to set a boundary, not to reclaim a room, not to change the locks, not to say, I am enough, just as I am, because you are, you always were. They called me old, but I carried the strength of every woman who was ever underestimated, and I turned that strength into a life worth living.